The howling winter winds of Montana painted the landscape in endless white, transforming Samuel Bennett's familiar farm into an otherworldly terrain. At 55, Sam had grown accustomed to the solitude that came with managing his sprawling property alone, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of his daily routines. But on this particular evening, as the brutal snowstorm raged outside, fate had other plans. The day had started like any other, with Sam tending to his livestock and checking the fences despite the worsening weather. It wasn't until dusk approached that he noticed something unusual near his barn, a dark shape against the pristine snow. Drawing closer, his heart clenched at the sight, a German shepherd, barely moving, its magnificent coat matted with ice and snow. "Hey there, buddy," Sam whispered, approaching slowly. The dog's eyes, though weary, held an intelligence that caught him off guard. Despite his usual pragmatic nature, Sam found himself already reaching out to help. The animal was clearly exhausted, its paws raw from the cold, its body showing signs of days without proper food. Without hesitation, Sam gathered the large dog in his arms, surprised by how willingly it allowed itself to be carried. Inside the barn's warmth, he carefully dried the animal, noting its muscular build beneath the disheveled fur. "You're no ordinary stray, are you?" he mused, observing how the dog's alert ears tracked every sound, despite its weakened state. Over the next few days, as the storm continued to rage outside, Sam found himself developing an unexpected routine around his new companion, whom he'd started calling Buddy. The dog's recovery was remarkable, showing a resilience that impressed even a seasoned farmer like Sam. But there was something else about Buddy that intrigued him, a certain wariness, an almost military precision to his movements that seemed at odds with a typical farm dog. During their morning walks around the property, Sam noticed how Buddy would stop at certain points, his posture changing subtly as if remembering something. The dog's behavior was particularly interesting whenever vehicles passed by on the distant road. He would freeze, watching intently until they disappeared from view. One morning, while checking his mailbox, Sam found himself in conversation with Sarah Martinez, the local veterinarian who occasionally helped with his livestock. Her eyes widened with interest when he mentioned his new companion. "A German shepherd, you say?" Sarah asked, her professional curiosity piqued. "Mind if I stop by to take a look? These breeds are fascinating. They're often specially trained for various purposes." Sam agreed, though something in her tone made him slightly uneasy. As he watched her drive away, Buddy appeared at his side, pressing against his leg in an almost protective gesture. Looking down at those intelligent eyes, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this dog's story than a simple case of getting lost in a storm. That evening, as Sam sat in his favorite armchair reviewing his farm ledgers, Buddy's head suddenly snapped up from his resting position by the fireplace. His ears perked forward, and a low rumble emerged from his throat. Sam listened intently but heard nothing beyond the usual winter wind. Yet Buddy's behavior stirred something in his gut, an instinct he'd learned to trust through years of farming in isolated territory. Moving to the window, Sam peered out into the gathering darkness. At first, he saw only the endless white of his snow-covered fields. But then, a movement caught his eye. A flash of light near the old oak tree at the edge of his property, gone so quickly he might have imagined it. Buddy's continued alertness, however, suggested otherwise. As Sam prepared for bed that night, he found himself double-checking the locks on his doors, something he rarely bothered with in this peaceful part of Montana. Buddy followed him on his rounds, their footsteps in sync, as if they'd been a team for years rather than days. Looking at his new companion, Sam couldn't help but wonder what circumstances had brought this extraordinary animal to his door, and why he couldn't shake the feeling that Buddy's arrival was just the beginning of something much bigger than a simple rescue. If this story has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, the storm having finally exhausted itself. Sam's routine farm chores took on a different rhythm with Buddy by his side, the dog's presence already feeling natural, as if he'd always belonged there. However, their peaceful morning was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah Martinez's truck, rolling up the snow-covered driveway. Sarah emerged from her vehicle carrying her medical bag, her breath visible in the cold morning air. "Good morning, Sam, and this must be our mysterious friend." Her tone was friendly, but Sam noticed how her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied Buddy, who had positioned himself carefully between them. The examination that followed was revealing in unexpected ways. Sarah's professional demeanor couldn't quite mask her growing excitement as she checked Buddy over. "Sam, this is remarkable," she said, running her hands along Buddy's muscular frame. "This dog has had extensive training, the way he responds to touch, his posture, and look at this." She pointed to a small mark behind Buddy's ear, barely visible beneath his fur. "This is a tattoo. It's a registration number of some kind, but it's different from any I've seen before." She pulled out her phone and started typing. "I'd like to research this. There's something familiar about the pattern." Before she could finish her thought, Buddy suddenly stood at attention, his focus intense on something outside. Moments later, a large black SUV drove past the farm, moving slowly along the county road. Sam watched as Buddy's behavior shifted subtly. Not aggressive, but alertly watchful, tracking the vehicle until it disappeared from view. Sarah observed this with evident interest. "How long did you say you've had him?" she asked, making notes on her phone. "There's something about his reactions that reminds me of a case I heard about during my training in Colorado, a specialized breeding and training facility that..." The sudden ring of her phone interrupted her. Sarah checked the screen and frowned. "I need to take this." "Excuse me for a moment." She walked to her truck, her conversation too quiet to hear, but her body language suggested tension. When she returned, her demeanor had changed. "I'm sorry, Sam, but I need to go. Emergency at the Thompson farm." She hesitated, then added, "Be careful with this dog, Sam. I think, well, just keep your eyes open. I'll be in touch once I've done some research." After Sarah left, Sam couldn't shake a feeling of unease. He spent the afternoon working in his barn, Buddy never far from his side. As he organized his tools, he discovered an old newspaper that must have fallen from the hayloft. The date caught his eye. It was from 3 years ago. A small article was circled in faded red ink. "Elite training facility closes under mysterious circumstances." Sam's attention was drawn away from the paper by the sound of approaching vehicles. Through the barn door, he saw 2 cars pulling up to his gate, the black SUV from earlier, and a police cruiser. Buddy's reaction was immediate but controlled, moving closer to Sam while keeping his eyes fixed on the newcomers. A man in a sheriff's uniform stepped out, accompanied by someone in an expensive-looking coat. "Mr. Bennett," the sheriff called out, "we'd like to speak with you about that dog you recently acquired. There's been some concern about missing animals in the area." As Sam watched them approach, Buddy pressed against his leg, and in that moment, he made a decision. Something about this situation felt wrong, despite the official presence. The newspaper article, Sarah's unfinished story about Colorado, Buddy's precise training. Pieces of a puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they formed raised more questions than answers. Standing in his barn doorway, Sam realized he was now part of something much larger than a simple case of rescuing a lost dog. The question was, how far was he willing to go to protect his new friend, and what consequences would that decision bring? The answers, he suspected, would come sooner than he'd like. Sam's mind raced as he faced the unexpected visitors. Years of dealing with livestock traders had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every fiber of his being told him to be cautious. With practiced calm, he stepped forward to greet them, keeping one hand reassuringly on Buddy's head. "Sheriff Thompson." Sam nodded, recognizing the local law enforcement officer. "What brings you out this way?" His eyes shifted to the man in the expensive coat, whose pristine appearance seemed out of place in the rural setting. The well-dressed man stepped forward, extending a manicured hand. "Alexander Drake, Mr. Bennett. I represent Elite Canine Solutions." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "We've been tracking a valuable asset that went missing during transport 3 months ago. When Dr. Martinez reported seeing a German Shepherd matching our description, Sam felt Buddy tense beneath his hand. The dog's reaction was subtle but unmistakable. 3 months ago?" Sam interrupted, remembering the newspaper article. "That's interesting, Mr. Drake, considering the article I just found suggesting your facility closed 3 years ago." A flicker of something. Surprise? Annoyance? Crossed Drake's face before his professional mask slipped back into place. "Ah, you must be referring to our Colorado facility. Common misconception. We've since relocated and restructured. Now, about the dog." Sheriff Thompson cleared his throat. "Sam, if this is their missing animal, they have the right to reclaim it. They've shown me all the necessary documentation." But Sam wasn't listening anymore. His attention had been caught by something else. A familiar truck approaching from the distance. Sarah Martinez's veterinary vehicle was making its way up the road, and there was something about its timing that felt significant. "Would you mind showing me that documentation?" Sam asked, buying time. "And I'd like to hear more about this transport you mentioned. Strange coincidence, having a dog go missing in Montana when your facility is..." He deliberately left the location hanging. Drake's polite demeanor slipped slightly. "The documentation is with our legal team. We can have it sent over, but really, Mr. Bennett, this is a simple matter. That dog represents years of specialized training and significant investment. We're prepared to compensate you for your time and any expenses incurred." Sarah's truck pulled up, and she emerged quickly, clutching a folder. Her expression was controlled, but Sam could see the tension in her movements. "I'm glad I caught you all," she said, her voice carrying across the yard. "I've been doing some research about that registration number." Drake turned sharply. "Dr. Martinez, this is a private matter between our organization and Mr. Bennett. Your services are not required here." "Actually," Sarah replied, opening her folder, "I think they are. You see, I've been in touch with the American Veterinary Association's Special Investigation Unit. They're very interested in discussing certain discrepancies in registration records from Colorado, particularly those involving a specific breeding program that was supposedly shut down 3 years ago." The atmosphere shifted palpably. Sheriff Thompson straightened, his hand moving to rest near his badge. "Mr. Drake, is there something you haven't told me about this situation?" Sam watched as the carefully constructed facade began to crack. Drake's professional smile had vanished entirely, replaced by a calculating look that made Sam instinctively step closer to Buddy. The dog remained perfectly still, but Sam could feel the coiled tension in his body. "There are aspects of our operation that are classified," Drake said stiffly. "The confidentiality agreements we maintain with various agencies, would those be the same agencies mentioned in this report?" Sarah interrupted, pulling out a document. "Because I have here a very interesting letter from the Colorado State Board of Animal Health. They seem quite surprised to learn that Elite Canine Solutions is still operating, considering the terms of their cease and desist order." The revelation hung in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Sam could see the wheels turning in Sheriff Thompson's mind as he processed this new information. Drake's composed exterior had completely crumbled, replaced by barely contained fury, but it was Buddy's reaction that caught everyone's attention. For the first time since the visitors had arrived, he moved forward, positioning himself in clear view of Drake. His posture wasn't aggressive, it was assertive, almost challenging, as if he was finally facing something he'd been running from. The tense standoff was broken by the sound of more vehicles approaching, 2 police cars from the county sheriff's department. Sarah's call earlier had set more wheels in motion than Drake had anticipated. As the new arrivals pulled up, Sam noticed Drake's confident demeanor crumbling further. "I took the liberty of contacting the county department," Sarah explained, her voice steady. "They're very interested in the documentation I've uncovered. It seems Elite Canine Solutions has quite a history of questionable practices." She turned to Sheriff Thompson. "The facility in Colorado wasn't shut down voluntarily. It was investigated for ethical violations in their training programs." Sheriff Thompson's expression hardened as he processed this information. "Mr. Drake, I think you need to explain exactly what's going on here. The paperwork you showed me earlier was carefully crafted to look official," Sarah interjected, pulling more documents from her folder. "But when cross-referenced with state records, the discrepancies are clear. The registration numbers don't match any legitimate training facility in the country." As the truth began to unravel, Buddy remained steadfast beside Sam, his posture reflecting years of professional training, but his loyalty clearly lying with the farmer who had saved him. Sam felt a surge of protective instinct as he watched Drake's facade completely dissolve. "You don't understand what's at stake here," Drake said, his polished accent giving way to something harder. "These dogs are worth millions to the right buyers. Their training makes them unique assets. We've invested years in developing their capabilities." "Capabilities for what exactly?" one of the newly arrived deputies asked, stepping forward. Drake's silence spoke volumes. Sarah seized the moment to reveal more of what she'd discovered. "I spoke with Dr. Michael Chen at the Colorado State Veterinary Board. He remembered this case clearly. Elite Canine Solutions wasn't just training dogs. They were pushing the boundaries of animal behavior modification, using techniques that had been banned by international conventions." Sam felt sick as he looked at Buddy, understanding now why the dog had such unusual reactions to certain situations. "The training facility in Colorado," he said slowly. "It wasn't closed, was it? You just moved it underground, continued your operations in secret." Drake's expression confirmed Sam's suspicion. "These animals are capable of extraordinary things," he insisted. "Their potential is beyond anything you can imagine. The military contracts alone were terminated when the ethical violations came to light," Sarah finished. She turned to the law enforcement officers. "I have copies of all the original investigation files. The Colorado authorities have been trying to track down the remaining dogs for years to ensure they were properly rehabilitated." Sheriff Thompson had heard enough. "Mr. Drake, I think you need to come down to the station to answer some questions." He turned to his deputies. "Call the state police. They'll want to hear about this operation." As Drake was led away, Sam noticed something remarkable. Buddy, who had maintained his alertness throughout the confrontation, visibly relaxed. It was as if a weight had been lifted from the dog's powerful shoulders. Sarah approached them both, her expression gentle. "That tattoo behind his ear," she said softly. "It matches the records of a dog named Atlas, one of the most successful graduates of their original training program. He disappeared during the raid on their Colorado facility. Everyone assumed..." She paused, watching as Buddy, or Atlas, leaned against Sam's leg. "Well, it doesn't matter what we assumed. Matter what? What matters is he found his way here." Sam absorbed this information, thinking about the incredible journey that had brought this extraordinary animal to his farm. "Atlas," he said thoughtfully, testing the name. The dog's ears perked up, but his eyes remained fixed on Sam, with the same trust and loyalty he'd shown since that first night in the storm. "You know," Sarah continued, "there's something poetic about all this. Atlas was their star trainee, known for his intelligence and adaptability. But instead of becoming what they intended, he found his way to someone who could appreciate him for who he is, not what he was trained to be." As the law enforcement vehicles departed with Drake, Sam realized this wasn't just a story about rescuing a dog. It was about the profound connection between two souls who had found each other against all odds. A buddy, or Atlas, had chosen to trust again, to believe in the goodness of humanity despite his past experiences. In the days following Drake's departure, life at the Bennett farm settled into a new rhythm. The media attention that followed the exposed scandal of Elite Canine Solutions brought unexpected changes to their quiet corner of Montana. Sam found himself fielding calls from reporters and animal rights organizations, all eager to hear about the remarkable German shepherd who had escaped his past to find sanctuary in a snowstorm. Sarah Martinez became a frequent visitor, helping Sam navigate the legal proceedings that would officially grant him custody of Atlas, though they both still called him Buddy. Her expertise proved invaluable as they worked to understand and address the lingering effects of his specialized training. "It's extraordinary," Sarah remarked one evening, watching as Buddy helped Sam guide the sheep into their pen with natural ease. "He's retained all his advanced training, but he's choosing to use those skills in such different ways. Look at how he adapts his herding technique for your older ewes. That's not just training, that's emotional intelligence." Sam nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "He's teaching me as much as I'm teaching him," he admitted. "Yesterday, he alerted me to a weak spot in the fence before any sheep could escape. Saved me hours of searching in the back pasture." The transformation in Buddy was remarkable. While he maintained his alertness and intelligence, the tension that had marked his early days at the farm had melted away. He no longer startled at unexpected vehicles or showed anxiety around strangers. Instead, he had developed an uncanny ability to read situations and respond appropriately, whether that meant warmly greeting Sarah's young nephew during visits or maintaining a watchful presence when unknown cars approached the property. One particularly memorable moment came when representatives from the American Kennel Club visited to document Buddy's story. The organization was updating its records and policies regarding specialized training facilities, using the Elite Canine Solutions case as a catalyst for change. As the officials interviewed Sam, Buddy demonstrated his remarkable abilities, not the militaristic skills Drake had valued, but his genuine intelligence and empathy. "We're seeing more cases like this," the AKC representative explained, watching Buddy expertly assist Sam with farm tasks. Dogs bred and trained for intensive programs, finding their way to more suitable lives. But Buddy's case is unique. The bond you've formed, the way he's adapted his abilities to farm work, it's unprecedented. That evening, as Sam sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Buddy rested his head on Sam's knee. The dog's eyes, once wary and haunted, now held a peaceful contentment that mirrored Sam's own feelings. "You know," Sam said softly, scratching behind Buddy's ears, "when I found you in that storm, I thought I was the one doing the rescuing. Turns out we rescued each other." Sarah's words from earlier that week echoed in his mind. She had been reviewing the final paperwork for Buddy's official adoption when she'd looked up with a smile. "Sometimes the best things in life come to us disguised as challenges," she'd said. "When you took in a freezing dog during a snowstorm, you had no idea you were actually becoming part of a much bigger story. The implications of that bigger story were still unfolding. The exposure of Elite Canine Solutions had prompted a nationwide review of animal training facilities. Several other operations had come under scrutiny, and more dogs from similar backgrounds were being discovered and rehabilitated. Buddy's story had become a symbol of hope, a testament to the resilience of the canine spirit and the transformative power of trust and compassion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sam reflected on how much his life had changed in the months since that stormy night. His quiet, orderly world had been disrupted in the most unexpected way, but he wouldn't have it any other way. The farm felt more alive now, more purposeful, with Buddy's presence weaving new energy through every daily task. Spring had finally arrived in Montana, bringing with it new life and renewed purpose to the Bennett farm. The last patches of snow were melting away, revealing tender green shoots pushing through the soil. Sam stood at his fence line, watching as Buddy expertly guided a group of newborn lambs and their mothers toward fresh pasture. The past year had brought changes Sam never could have imagined. His story, their story, had inspired a movement. The Bennett farm had become something of a sanctuary, not just for Buddy, but for other specially trained dogs transitioning to civilian life. Sarah's connections with animal welfare organizations had helped establish a network of support for similar cases across the country. "You've created something extraordinary here," Sarah commented, joining Sam at the fence. She had just finished examining their newest arrival, a Belgian Malinois discovered at an abandoned training facility in Idaho. "These dogs were trained to be weapons, but you and Buddy have shown they can become healers instead." Sam watched as Buddy demonstrated proper herding techniques to the newcomer, his patience and gentleness a far cry from his military-style training. "He's the extraordinary one," Sam replied. "I just provided the space for him to become who he was meant to be." The transformation of the farm had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Agricultural colleges had sent students to study their unique approach to integrating highly trained dogs into farm work. Veterinary behaviorists visited to document the rehabilitation process. Even military officials had come to observe, taking notes on the successful transition of these specialized animals to peaceful civilian roles. One morning, as Sam and Buddy made their rounds, a familiar car approached the farm. It was Michael Chen, the veterinarian from Colorado, who had helped expose Elite Canine Solutions. He had finally made the trip to Montana to see for himself what had become of Atlas. The dog he'd feared was lost forever. "I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes," Dr. Chen said, watching Buddy confidently direct the farm's activities. "When we raided the facility, we found evidence of such intensive conditioning. To see him now, so at peace, so in his element, it's miraculous." Sam smiled, remembering the frightened, frozen dog he'd found in the storm. "Sometimes the greatest transformations come from the simplest things," he reflected. "Trust, patience, and the freedom to choose your own path." As the sun began to set on another productive day, Sam sat in his favorite porch chair, Buddy settled contentedly at his feet. Sarah's truck pulled up the driveway for their weekly check-in, but this time she wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a young girl with her parents, another success story from their growing network. Their German Shepherd, one of Buddy's former training mates, had found his way to their family after being discovered in an abandoned facility. The girl's eyes lit up when she saw Buddy. "Is that really Atlas? The one who started it all?" Sam chuckled. "That's him, though he prefers Buddy these days. Would you like to meet him?" As they watched the two dogs reunite, playing with a joy that belied their intense training, Sam felt a profound sense of rightness. The nightmare of Elite Canine Solutions had ended, but it had given birth to something beautiful, a network of compassion, healing, and second chances. That evening, as the Montana sky painted itself in brilliant sunset colors, Sam reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. A single act of kindness during a snowstorm had sparked a chain of events that transformed not only his life, but the lives of countless others. Buddy, dozing peacefully nearby, was no longer just a highly trained military asset or even just a faithful farm dog. He had become a symbol of hope, a living testament to the power of love and redemption. End of story. Dear viewers, we hope Sam and Buddy's journey has touched your hearts as deeply as it has touched ours. This tale of trust, transformation, and second chances reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful stories come from the most unexpected moments. For more inspiring stories like this one, we've created a special playlist that explores the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. Find it by clicking the link to your left. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that celebrate the complexity and beauty of life. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story resonated with you. Don't miss our upcoming content as we continue to share more heartwarming tales of hope and transformation.